We're often asked as recruiters, what does it take for legal to move beyond just dispensing legal advice and to have a seat at the top table? What does it take to not just be the conscience of the organisation, but to help shape its strategy and to be involved in that? Today on Lessons I Learned in Law, I'm joined by Emily Barker, who has done just that in her new role that she took just about 12 months ago with Dutch-headquartered and Euronext-listed business Arcadis. Now, Arcadis is an engineering and sustainability consultancy that's 32,000 people strong. And Emily changed sectors. She moved from the technology and e-commerce space and moved into the position at Arcadis as Global Group General Counsel and member of the executive committee. So she's really stepped up in that role and flourished in that position. Her whole team has taken on new energy from legal position being elevated from advisory to being involved in the strategy through her fronting up and facing that by taking a seat at that top table. So there's loads in there here for everyone. We talk about how she leads with courage and humanity and how important it has been in her career. She's based in the Netherlands to have immersed herself in local culture, fluent in Dutch, one of a handful of general counsels that I know that are common law qualified based here. And that's really propelled her into and helped propel her into that position where she sits today. So loads to unpick. I hope you enjoy. Today's episode of Lessons I Learned in Law is proudly brought to you by Wordsmith AI. Now, Wordsmith AI is redefining how in-house legal teams automate routine tasks and repetitive tasks like contract review and internal requests so that you and your legal team can work strategically and work on proactive projects. They're an Edinburgh-based startup. They're one of the UK's fastest growing startups, and at a really exciting time in their growth journey, they're showing how technology, AI and talent as a combination can really build the modern in-house legal team. So find out more by heading over to wordsmith.ai. Hi Emily, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be with you, Scott.
Thank you. It's been a little while since we've been chatting around this, but you've had lots going on over the past 12 months or so. But good to finally sit down and speak. So I've given an introduction as best I can, and gone through a little bit about your history and your current position. But if you could start with an overview of your role at the moment and a little bit about the business and the team.
Sure, no problem. So I'm Global General Counsel of Arcadis, which is a sustainable design, engineering and consulting business operating internationally or globally. Nice. We have about just north of 32,000 employees across the globe. Wow. And our mission is to improve quality of life. Great.
And how long have you been in that position?
It's quite new still. I started in September 2024. Right. So at this moment in time, I'm about 9-10 months in.
Wow. Yeah.
So feeling quite settled, but still rather fresh.
Yeah. Cool. And the role, so you're into a global general counsel position, and tell us a bit about what's involved in that and sort of functions and areas that's your responsibility at Arcadis.
Yeah, sure. So it's a full scope GC role. Yeah. So I've got the company secretary and kind of governance piece, the legal team globally working on all of our projects and everything business related, compliance and also privacy. Okay, cool. And alongside being the GC, I sit in the executive leadership team.
Oh, awesome. And we were chatting just before we went on air, because obviously that role's relatively fresh. But it's your first time sitting on the exec and to that role. How's that been?
Yeah, it's definitely a new adventure. I think it's one of the most interesting parts of the role, actually. I mean, I've managed a legal function before, but this is a chance to really kind of lean in and contribute well beyond legal. Yeah. So I'm there obviously for my expertise as a lawyer, but I like to think I bring much more to the table, and when you're sitting in the executive room, it's not really anymore about which issues you might own in your function, but really about just having a broad, diverse collection of perspectives to solve all of the business challenges and really make good decisions.
Yeah. There's plenty of challenges at the moment, as we were saying, with everything moving at lightning pace. So great. And Arcadis they're listed in the Netherlands on Euronext.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the country has about 150-year history.
Okay.
Back to the days of being a sort of Dutch water management operation, to today's sort of global enterprise, and through various acquisitions and as well as organic growth, the company's grown exponentially, I would say, in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Nice. All right, great. Well, thank you. We'll jump in then with lesson 1. If you could start by sharing that, please.
My first lesson in the law is that courage and optimism can change the world.
Right.
Now, that might sound a little idealistic for a lawyer, but what it's really about is sort of stepping back from the day-to-day of what we might be encountering in our role. Looking at the world's problems, and Arcadis is really at the forefront of a lot of the stuff related to climate change, both in terms of transition to new energy, climate adaptation for our clients, and also decarbonising in general. And I think what we're all kind of realising is that solving these big issues of the world are really, really difficult. And the sort of skills and attributes and approaches that might have got us to where we are today are not the ones that are going to change the future. And I think optimism and courage are really two skills or attributes that I really believe can take us forward. Okay. And I think are really nice ones for lawyers to focus on, because they're not the things that necessarily come naturally, but I do think that we can really embrace these and make a change.
Nice. So how do you you touched on it there, and maybe not naturally, or what's trained into lawyers being very risk averse. Is there anything you do to encourage your team or encourage your team members to take that optimistic approach or being brave?
Yeah, there's been a lot of research done actually around these attributes, and there's even a framework called the Inner Development Goals, which is sort of the personal version of the Sustainable Development Goals. Really interesting to check out, and courage and optimism belong to that framework. Okay. I think for lawyers, there's also been a lot of research done around lawyers' traits, right? And what comes out of that is often very high levels of skepticism. And I think that comes from our sort of analytical thinking and critical training, where we're really taught to kind of tear things apart. But if we can harness that to actually solve problems rather than find them, I think it can be really powerful. And I think as well the kind of energy that we have from maybe a little bit of pessimism can also be turned around and really made into courage, which sort of gives the energy for new ideas and for change and exploration. Nice.
And when did you first, did you feel this is something you naturally lean into, or when did you first practice this as a lawyer, in this mindset or this approach?
Yeah, I think if I go back to when I was a little girl, actually, I think the value of justice was already very strong in me. And I've sometimes told a story about when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was driving in the car with my dad late at night, and I saw the smokestacks of the oil refinery in my hometown. Right. And I asked my dad about the smoke that was billowing into the sky. And my dad taught me, and this is back in the 1980s, about the hole in the ozone layer, as we used to call it. Yeah. And that hole sitting right above Australia, where I'm from. And it triggered something in me that, human beings were really kind of destroying the world in a way that could be prevented. And I got very exercised at that moment. And the next day, I wrote a letter to the editor of the local newspaper. Okay. Really sort of highlighting this issue. And outlining a couple of practical ways that I'd learned from my dad about how we can save the planet, you know, using our cars less, you know, avoiding plastic bags, etc. Turning off the lights. Very, very simple stuff. But I guess you could say it was my first sort of climate activism.
Dipping your toe in the water.
Dipping my toe in the water. And I guess it took some courage. You know, I was quite shy as a kid, and having something published in the local paper was pretty scary.
Awesome.
But I guess it was also optimism as well. Like, we can change this. There are things that each of us can do to kind of impact.
Yeah.
And that's something I've kind of flowed through to my team even today, I hope in some small way, by focusing on the things that sort of help to trigger, you know, courage and optimism.
Yeah. Did you got a copy of the published article?
I probably do somewhere.
Yeah. It'll be up on the wall.
Yeah, it did get published, which is good. It was a handwritten letter, you know,
nice.
old school style.
Yeah.
And it's something I'd forgotten about for many years until sort of quite recently, I would say. It kind of popped up. But there's also lots of practical strategies you can use to encourage courage and optimism. I mean, even things about how you frame personally the world, what kind of influences you seek out, and also things like positive feedback have been found to really foster courage and optimism.
Okay. Because, for me anyway, it feels really, really difficult because everything around, like, if we stay on the subject around climate and sustainability, like a lot of the news that you're exposed to is negative, and it doesn't seem to be much improvement. But you working in a business that's at the forefront of that, and having stepped into that business relatively recently, is there stuff to be optimistic about, like in terms of what like maybe doesn't get coverage and stuff that's happening?
Absolutely. I think, you know, we all know that our news is biased towards the negative, right? So I guess if you want to practice courage and optimism, you know, literally you need to kind of be selective about what you expose yourself to, and maybe seek out those more positive articles or information. But I think one thing that's for me cause for optimism is the demand for our services. I mean, we are doing projects every day which decarbonise the world, which help our clients transition to cleaner energy, and which help deal with the effects of climate change and encourage biodiversity, etc. So from building a factory to New York City flood prevention measures, etc. So that's, for me, cause for optimism, that the demand for our services is very much still there. It might be sort of framed differently in different places, especially in the US, but the demand is still there. And I think with the cost of renewables going down so rapidly as well, we're very much, you know, on that train, and that train is not stopping, thankfully.
Oh, good to know. Good to know that someone's, there's still the drive towards that. And so for someone not in the sector in engineering, how does a business like Arcadis, how does it work with clients? And it's a consultancy for the engineering space, but what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we focus on sort of 4 business areas. Those are resilience, so that's all the sort of environmental work, so a lot of land remediation, flood prevention, etc. Work with water-based projects. Then we have the kind of natural or built assets. So everything from energy efficient or sustainable buildings and structures, both public and commercial. And then we have a mobility business, which is really around the transportation piece. Everything from high-speed rail through to highways that are more efficient in terms of emissions, tunnels, etc. And then finally, we have a digital intelligence business. And so we're really looking at how we can provide digital solutions to our clients that might be coupled with some of the other services that we're providing for a much more integrated solution.
Right. Nice. All right, that's good. Good explainer, and yeah, so we'll dig into a little bit more around that as well. And globally, 32,000 employees. Where's the majority, or is there a jurisdiction where there's the business is the most prevalent?
Yeah, North America is our biggest market or markets. Followed by Europe. We've also got business in Australia and China and South America, but the North America piece is the largest.
Okay.
And
good again. Good to know on the sustainability piece, given everything you read in here. So yeah, good to hear that. And you touched on there your Australian roots. So when did you talk me through your qualification into law, and then what brought you to the Netherlands?
yeah, so I studied my law degree in Australia. I had to spend some time briefly overseas, but I've got an Australian law degree, and I qualified in Melbourne at a firm called back then Blake Dawson Waldron.
Okay.
It's part of Ashurst today,
Yeah, right.
but it's one of the bigger firms in Australia. I trained in corporate banking and tax, so really quite a financial edge, which was maybe a little bit surprising given my sort of justice lean. But anyway, I settled in corporate because I found that the most sort of broad, and I thought that would be a good stepping stone for going abroad,
Okay.
which I had an interest in that, from early on.
Okay. What drove that? Was there sort of personal in terms of international and scope, or had you lived abroad when you were a child, or?
No, I hadn't at all. In fact, I hadn't left the country until I was
Wow.
in my late teens and first went backpacking.
Okay.
And I guess that just opened up a whole new world for me.
Nice.
And I got the travel bug. I also met my now husband, who's Dutch, and I decided to take a gap year in the middle and explore the world a little bit.
Nice.
And then I knew that, okay, I needed to go back to Australia and finish my degree and maybe get some work experience, but I definitely wanted to come back.
Cool.
And I did after 3 years. Yeah.
Absolutely. What was the travel route when you went backpacking?
So I've backpacked through a good part of Europe, and then actually before I started working, I went backpacking through Russia and the Baltics.
Oh, wow.
And Central and Eastern Europe for about 4 months.
Right.
On my own, without a mobile phone, which was kind of exciting in those days when you had the Lonely Planet book, this big brick of a book. And you had to use payphones and, catch trains by yourself without having an app or a review of the place you were going to stay next. You literally got off the train and then you found a place to stay.
Yeah.
So I would say it's quite different from maybe traveling these days.
Crazy, right? For parents as well. I remember, I went backpacking in South America. Similar, no phone, and just the weekly call from a payphone when you had access to it. And I think you'd struggle now without that constant reassurance
Absolutely.
that they're okay.
I think as well it felt much more adventurous than travel feels today. I think travel today, it's very difficult to find these sort of off the beaten track locations because someone on Instagram has put up photos and described it in minute detail that there's very little left that's actually a surprise anymore, which is kind of a pity.
Shame. Yeah, it's a shame. You even just stumbling across a good cafe or somewhere for breakfast, I just don't think happens anymore either.
No.
Everything, as you say, has been
It's been
Instagrammed.
tagged.
Instagram to the hilt. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'd get. If my friends heard me saying that, I'm probably the worst at saying I won't go to somewhere that's got less than however many
5 stars.
reviews, or 4 point. I think I'm a 4.3 and above. But never mind. And what was that like traveling through? Because part of that route, I'd imagine, will be inaccessible now, and not somewhere that you could. Go traveling.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember getting a visa at the border in Estonia to get into Russia. I think because it was all too complicated to organise from here. But it was a real adventure, and, you know, it was back in the days where one did these things on a shoestring and therefore had to be quite creative about getting from A to B, and, you know, managing on a small budget. It exposed you to local food, for example, you know, and on public buses, you know, you bump into all sorts of folks, both other travellers and locals. And I do think that's a more enriching experience than the kind of carefully curated travel that we tend to do today, and that I think our children will do. And maybe there's other advantages of that, but I think I learnt a lot about myself, and I guess I learnt a lot of sort of independence, resilience, creativity for finding your way out of situations when you've missed the last train at night, or, you know, but also the kindness of strangers. It's interesting. I think in that sense, I'm quite optimistic from that experience that there's always people there to help.
Yeah. Just going to pause for a couple of seconds and say that today's episode is brought to you in partnership with Wordsmith AI. The Wordsmith AI is redefining how in-house legal teams work and operate, and how they automate repetitive tasks like contract review and other internal queries, and fielding those internal requests that are repetitive and can clog up how a legal team works. It allows in-house legal teams, frees up time to work on more strategic projects proactively. They're based in Edinburgh, so it's close to my heart, and they're one of the fastest growing legal technology providers globally. And they're really redefining how you can take technology and people and talent and transform the way that a business operates. So check them out at wordsmith.ai.
Thanks.
So we'll move on. If you could share lesson 2 with us, please.
So lesson 2 for me, Scott, is global vision, local wisdom. Okay. And this is something I've encountered throughout my career, actually, both in my current role but in previous roles. And I think it's something a lot of in-house lawyers, maybe also private practice, actually, really come up against, and in the business world more generally, I guess. And it's really, how do you create a global organisation while still respecting and embracing the local differences? And it comes from everything, it covers everything from sort of how you organise your people, how you share knowledge, how you collaborate, through to sort of more boring stuff around your policies and your guardrails and governance. And this is something I would say is still a journey for me, and how to master that match. But I guess as a foreigner myself in the Netherlands, I hope I've learned a bit about other cultures and about other countries, and had an appreciation for that. And it's something that I try to apply in my work as well, because I do think there's a richness there that we need to relate to. And of course, everyone belongs to a local context somewhere. So you kind of ignore that at your peril. And some of the things that we've done in my team at Arcadis since I've joined is we've set up a program for improving global collaboration, and especially in a sort of business partnering context. And we're running that program together with a behavioural psychologist who's trying to equip us with some new skills for better working across borders, working remotely, and really kind of, embracing the role as business partners with all our kind of stakeholders across the company.
Yeah, it must be a huge transformation project, it sounds like. How is the team geographically structured then? Is there people based in various hubs, or how does it operate?
Yeah, so they're sort of organised in a mix of sort of local teams and also business area leads, and also sort of functionally in terms of compliance and privacy, those are separate teams or sub-teams. There's about 135 people that are in the team globally. So managing all of that is indeed, it's a privilege, I would say, but it's also a challenge, especially in this day of I guess, reduced flying, or at least we're trying to, be really mindful about our carbon footprint. So one of the things I did in the first 6 months that I joined Arcadis was to go around and see my teams locally. And whilst that's not something I'll do every day because of the carbon impact, I found it really beneficial just to go and listen to what's happening on the ground, smell the air, taste the local brew, and really kind of understand the perspective of my teams on the ground. And it's been super useful. And I think the teams also really appreciate, if their leader makes the time for that, and to be curious and discover what's going on.
Yeah. So how did that first 6 months must have been intense then?
It was pretty intense. Yeah. So I visited each of these localities, and was the team were incredibly gracious and kind in their hosting of me. They showed me. I went to local museums, had great food. Really got to spend time with the team and in their local environment, which I think is important today with all of the kind of remote working. So it was a real eye-opener, and I think it really accelerated the learning for me as well as a leader.
Right, good. What, in terms of that six, or just stepping into that type of new role, lot of change in terms of sector and remit of the position, stepping onto the execo. How do you prepare for something, or how did you prepare for that? Where, do you set a 90-day plan, or do you set a 6 month? What's your vision in the short term, and how do you prepare?
All of the above, I would say. It's a very different role to being in a kind of number two role and in a head of legal role, which I was effectively in before. Because you're now at the table with the business leaders there to make decisions and really steer a business. So it's less about being a lawyer and more about being a collaborator and a problem solver. And I think, although I don't come from the sector, I think what is still useful for someone who is coming from a different space is that you bring new ideas and new perspectives. And maybe challenge the existing ways of working. And I think that was kind of the invitation by selecting me. I guess it wasn't an accident. They could have hired someone from the industry. And it's also very surprising how many issues are kind of common across large corporates, to be honest, even though I came from tech and consumer e-commerce world into engineering and professional services. Many of the issues that a global business faces today really carry through across companies.
Okay, yeah. And a fresh pair of eyes in terms of the sector and different challenges that you've perhaps been through and faced is key to that as well, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ways of working that we've been using in the tech world are now being adopted by other companies because of the pace of change and the complexity of the world. It's asking different things from leaders and also teams. For example, the collaboration that I mentioned is more important than ever. And if you look at those surveys of skills of GCs, for example, the collaboration skill has gone right up, same in the executive space. And things like sort of producing and technical expertise have gone down. And with the adoption of technology and AI, that's only going to accelerate. And you see it now already, that the technical expertise is becoming sort of less central. And it's really about how you manage complexity and you work with others in a kind of fast-moving world.
Interesting, yeah. And just on the global and local piece, so you moved to the Netherlands, corporate M&A lawyer in private practice here. How important, you're dual qualified, right? Which is, I think, for a lot of the lawyers I meet that are expats in the Netherlands, it's not been something that they've gone to. How important do you feel that's been for you?
I think For a lot of Australian lawyers, it goes without saying.
Yeah.
And even though Australian law is probably 90% the same as English law, most of the time, I certainly was brought up that was a really natural course to take. But I think it is part of embracing that local and realising that you need to maybe adopt some of the local customs. And I guess, I was brought over to the Netherlands by Eleanor Novery, as it then was, now A&O Sherman. And I had to learn a lot when I joined the Amsterdam office, because even though it was part of this big global firm, there was very much a Dutch culture on the ground.
Okay.
And that I would say I wasn't completely prepared for, but, one finds one's way.
Yes.
And I think really embracing that, I've really benefited from sort of being more embracing of the culture rather than kind of living too much in the expat bubble.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a divide, I think, when you do. I find anyway. We've been here 2 years, not quite as long, but it takes some time to try and be embedded. In language, Dutch language, are you fluent?
Yes, so I'm fluent in Dutch.
Okay.
I started that pretty early on.
Right.
Because when I came over, the financial crisis had just hit.
Okay.
And I was hired to do a lot of sort of larger cross-border M&A work where there were, sort of White Shoe and Magic Circle firms on the other side of the table. That all suddenly evaporated.
Right.
And I found myself doing stuff in quite exotic jurisdictions like Africa and Russia, but also sort of Dutch private equity work.
Okay.
So the impetus to learn the language became sort of stronger, even though it wasn't so much in the content of my work, that was all in English, but also in the office environment and outside. So I decided to kind of throw myself into the language in the early years. And then I guess sort of also into the local culture. I live in the Jordaan in Amsterdam. It's a very Dutch neighbourhood, very mixed. My kids go to a Dutch school. And I've tried to kind of, whilst I'm still an Aussie, sort of really embrace my second country.
So flows through personal and work life. Nice. And do you feel, in terms of your Arcadis, the exec, is it in English? Is it English business?
It's a mix.
Or both
It's a mix. It's originally a Dutch company, now operating globally with North America as its biggest market. So our executive team is a mix of English, Dutch, American, you name it, they're in there. There's even an Aussie, another Aussie.
But the language on the execs, English.
That's all in English, and also for our boards, which are also a mix.
Okay, nice. Having a local insight into that, though, I'd imagine gives you even the cultural alignment with the business and being a Dutch headquartered business. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's something that's actually easily overlooked, to be honest. But I'm probably, one of the relatively few lawyers in the Netherlands who's sort of truly a hybrid, and has sort of delved into the Dutch piece as a foreigner, and often goes the other way around. But you have Dutch lawyers qualifying in New York, etc. But not many who take the time to learn the local stuff, and it's not easy because a lot of it's in Dutch. And if you're a common law lawyer, the system can feel quite foreign. It is quite different in places. But if you take that time, I think it's certainly been really rewarding for me from a career perspective, because it's opened up possibilities that I think wouldn't be there. And I can't imagine advising my CEO or my boards without a really good understanding of the Dutch environment, not so much from a business perspective, but from a corporate perspective and a headquarter perspective.
No, I certainly see it from a recruiter's eyes that there's like Dutch businesses, I think, are a lot of them off limits for expats within the market. It just doesn't, they don't really cross over as well. So I would agree that you're certainly in the minority, or one of a select few that have that have crossed that divide or crossed that bridge. So it's great. And kids, what age are the kids? So they're in Dutch school. Have they always been they've been in the Dutch school?
They're
obviously?
7 and 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So they're very Dutch, I would say.
Good.
Yeah.
It's a good. I like the system so far of what I've seen.
It's different.
It's different.
It's
Certainly.
different.
We had we had the first exposure to the summer party at the school, so in the school grounds, and it ended with some pretty leery techno music getting pumped out, and the decks were set up. So
oh wow, that sounds cooler than my school party. I have to say,
it was an eye opener with the kids. Like my son's fist pumping in the air, and okay, this is the Dutch, a little bit of Dutch culture, but nice. So we'll move on. If you could share your third and your final lesson, please.
Yeah, my final lesson is actually around humanity,
Okay.
And what I mean by that is really sort of human-centered leadership in this world that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We're being constantly confronted by the VUCA elements today. And I think as a lawyer in a global business and indeed any kind of executive leader in a global business, we see that the skills that we need to solve the problems that we're facing day to day require some of these skills that we touched upon earlier, like collaboration, empathy. Lawyers tend to score quite low on empathy as well, but it is something you can learn and develop. Right. It's about connecting with different stakeholders, reading the room, all of these things. It's not so much about the technical expertise anymore. Yeah. And I think if you look at some of the challenges that global businesses might be thinking about in their day-to-day around DEI or around technology adoption, they all require a very people-centric approach because it's easy to just implement a tool or to come up with a policy, but to actually get traction and to actually make a meaningful difference in your business, you very much need to focus on the human factor. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting learning for all of us. But for me, it's been something that's really sort of come to life in recent years in my career, maybe as I get further up the chain into leadership roles. Yeah. Of just how important that is. Right.
How did it shape your approach as a leader? Like how do you apply that?
I think it shows in a couple of ways. I think it's about how you spend your time. So in my current role, I spend a lot more time connecting with other leaders, with people in my team, with folks outside my company, utilising the networks that you have both in your industry or with your peers to collect information and form insights that can really help your business to tackle the issues that they're confronting and to really succeed. So I think it's around that a lot of people touch points. Right. It's about developing those skills like empathy, being able to listen more instead of just talking. Yeah. That's a tough one, I think, for many of us. Yes. And also trying to foster a culture of collaboration within the team. And we've done some programs around that as well at Arcadis. And it's very much work in progress. We find it, like many businesses, is quite challenging in the remote space to kind of bring people closer together. Yeah. But we know that is one of the key sort of skills that's going to help us really excel in today's world. Yeah.
And it must be front and centre with a business like a consulting business where it is all about your people.
Absolutely.
Arcadis. Yeah. How do you balance that with compliance and like the compliance piece or driving compliance as a legal function?
Well, I think compliance is about people, right? It's the human factor. I mean, there's very interesting studies out there about the effectiveness of policies, which tend to be the first thing that that you come up with as a lawyer or a compliance professional, right? Is like, let's regulate it and put it on paper.
Yeah.
And there's some very interesting research out there that shows that actually what's more important is the values of your workforce and the sort of moral code by which people operate, because a lot of compliance is intuitive, right? Especially when you get to sort of ethical stuff and the really bad stuff you don't want to happen in your company.
It should be, it should be values linked, I suppose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff doesn't have a playbook either, right? I mean, a lot of us have been grappling with the executive orders in the US and lots of developments in the DEI space, where, you know, society is really expecting us to take a role and to have a voice on certain issues. And at the same time, we're operating in a more polarized society where not everyone has the same view. And therefore, you know, really kind of understanding where the people in your organization are with these issues and trying to understand that and bring it together in a way that harmonizes rather than divides, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And how do you test for that? So when you're interviewing someone and you're looking for those soft skills and empathy and sort of human-centric approach, do you test for that specifically if you're interviewing someone?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Scott. I should be asking you as the recruiter, I guess. But I think it's something you've got to have on your radar, right? I mean, you can usually, you know, by the time someone gets to me for an interview, the CV's been scanned, the boxes are ticked on the expertise side. So what I really want to know is, how does this person find their way in my organization and in my team? And do they have the right kind of EQ and human centered skills to be able to really take stuff forward and to really be effective. And it's not enough that they've just got the qualifications or the work experience. They have to navigate a complex organization like ours.
Yeah.
And I think every company sort of tends to describe their organization as complex, to be honest, because they are often.
Yeah, and they're all different, right?
Because they're made up of people, right? So being able to navigate that is the difference between sort of managing and really excelling, I think, at what you do.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think from a recruiter's perspective, you're discouraged from going for your gut feel, right? But I think a lot of it comes down to that. But what makes up that gut feel for me often is it's curiosity, and it comes up so often. But people that ask questions and are interested and are inquisitive about the person that they're meeting, not just, like you said, the CV or the profile, I think can help you stand out. And it's difficult to fake. I think I agree, you can learn to be curious and be more conscious around it, but very difficult to fake. I think that genuine curiosity in people, and as you said, the human, the empathy, human-centric approach should be is what sets I think it's human superpower, right? And when everything else is at threat, knowledge.
Absolutely.
So yeah, very, very important. But good to hear it's part of the process for yourself. Okay, well, I'll just we'll wrap up by asking for a book recommendation or a podcast recommendation. I think you said you're not an avid podcast listener, but I'll push you on one of those.
Yeah, I don't have a fixed podcast that I subscribe to. I like to kind of, dip and pick across different topics. I do, though, love to listen to BBC Radio 6. Okay. I'm a big fan of indie music. Okay. And so my favourite show, which may be a podcast, I don't know, but is Iggy Pop Confidential on Sunday afternoons. So, right. And it can be quite eclectic, I would say. And then you have like Iggy Pop's deep sort of voice over the top, which is quite soothing. So that's my Sunday afternoon, is to listen to that.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's your band of the moment? Have you got a recommendation?
Band of the moment. Well, I saw that Oasis is reformed, which is like big news. I'd love to go to that concert.
Yeah.
That's definitely, as a kind of like teenager of the 90s, that's up there for sure.
Nice. I'm sure a law firm will have a box somewhere.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, you get an invite if anyone's listening. Perfect. So in that role, your new position at Arcadis, you're the first lawyer on the execo. So how did that come around, and why is it so important for legal to sit on the exec?
I think it's really important for global businesses that are managing in this VUCA world, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a lawyer in an executive team, you're not there to be kind of lawyering the whole time, right?
Yeah.
That's your area of expertise or your background, but it's not your role in the executive team. Your role is really being part of that group that together navigates these tricky issues and finds solutions and makes great, really smart decisions and manages things in a balanced way. For me, though, being a lawyer brings a couple of things. The first is, I think, the breadth of sight that you have across the organisation. When you're in the legal function, you really see everything. You see across all businesses and all topics, and you have very good relationships with the other functions, finance, people, etc. And that you can bring a very sort of broad perspective to the table, because often, folks that might be leading a business, they primarily see that business and they don't necessarily, have exposure to a lot of what's going on in the other spaces.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think secondly, it's around the rigor of analytical thinking, really analysing problems and being able to unpack them and see it from different angles. I think lawyers are very good at that.
Yeah.
And I think finally, it's kind of around the conscience, right? The conscience of the company, the moral compass. How are our stakeholders going to view this? What will clients think of this decision? What will our people think? Is this the right thing to do for our brand and our company? Is it aligned with our values? And how do we package this for our board or bring people along to a decision that might be a bit difficult? And I think lawyers can really be good on that front.
Right. And what's the practical difference if someone's not at the table, and the lawyer, if the general counsel isn't there, versus they're advising the business on these issues? Like, what do you feel are the barriers there from not sitting on the exec?
If you're not at the table, you don't have access to the information firsthand and in real time.
Yeah.
So that's already a step back.
Yeah.
If you're not at the table, your voice can't be heard as well.
True.
It's an afterthought. It's a less strong voice, because being given that seat at the table gives you legitimacy in the organisation and with the other leaders in the company. So it's really, really important. And also for the function, it's really important. I mean, it's been such a well-received thing in the team as well. That recognition of the function and its relevance, I think, is hugely motivating, and it helps me lead my team much better with that seat.
And the confidence, I think having the aspirational piece that you're touching on there for the other lawyers in the team, and knowing that you're part of the conversation at that top table and it's got a voice that's being heard, means it matters, right? It means that the function carries weight. And what's been the biggest challenge in operating on the exec?
I think it's really stepping out of that lawyer role and being just a business executive, another thinker at the table. And doing that in a collective way. I think if you're just running the function, it's quite top down and internally focused, but you're then sitting in a room with a bunch of other people, and you need to do things together. And that's, I think, both the most rewarding thing is being part of that additional team of cross-functional expertise with all sorts of diverse backgrounds. I really like that. I learn from the others in the team, and hopefully they learn something from me too. So I think that's the main sort of challenge, but also reward of this, and all of the things that come along with working with people from really diverse perspectives.
Nice. And how much of your time is split between that and focused on the deliverables from the legal function versus the strategy hat and the executive hat? Is there a split?
Yeah, the executive team does take up quite a lot of time because the meetings tend to be quite chunky, and then you have a lot of one-to-one contact with people, and also just the things that pop up day to day with your CEO or CFO, etc. And then I guess alongside that, my dealing with our boards takes up a fair bit of my time, and then the rest managing the functions. So it's busy times, I would say.
Full on, yeah. Wow.
You need an excellent team. You need a really strong team, and I'm lucky that I have that.
Brilliant. It's the holy grail, I would say, for lawyers working in a large organisation, that exec seat. So it's really great to see the position elevated in that way. Right. Well, thank you for taking the time, and it's really cool to hear. I love chatting to people that have made that are relatively new into a role, and hearing about the challenges and the interesting work that you've been doing. So great to hear, and keep fighting the sustainability fight. And yeah, lovely chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Wordsmith AI, for sponsoring today's episode. As a legal tech company, Wordsmith AI share our belief that great legal teams can take amazing tools and transform the way that in-house legal teams work and operate. So to find out more about Wordsmith, head over to wordsmith.ai. So that wraps up another episode of Lessons I Learned in Law, powered by Herriot Brown in-house legal recruitment. Now, I share these stories each week to help lawyers of all levels, and both in private practice or working in-house. And it doesn't matter if you're early in your career or you're already leading a team. Learning from your peers or from those who have walked in your shoes before, then this is the show for you. If you find it useful, I would love it if you could share it with your colleagues or share it with your network, or drop us a message just to let us know that you're listening and that you're out there. Feedback really helps us grow the show and take it in the direction that gives the most value to you, our listeners. So until next time, I've been Scott Brown. Thank you.